Welcome to Real Wealth, Real Health, the show that empowers you with insights, information, and inspiration to achieve your version of financial wellness. Learn how to balance living a full life today with planning for the future. This podcast is brought to you by Alpha Investing, a real estate-centric private capital network that provides exclusive investment opportunities to its members. And now, here are your hosts, Ada Piederico and Daniel Coca.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Real Wealth, Real Health. Our guest today is Robin Binkley. Robin is the co-founder of Real Equity Investment Partners. She is a professional real estate investor who has a deep desire to make positive change in the world, especially for women. Her experience in real estate investing includes single-family homes, multifamily syndication, international acquisitions, developments, and other passive income generating assets. In our conversation, we talk about investing abroad and what Robin has learned about real estate in Belize, where she is focused now on a new workforce housing development after buying a vacation property through a flagship brand. If you've ever wondered about buying or investing in other countries, you'll enjoy this conversation as we walk through the fundamentals of investing, no matter where, as well as the nuances and technicalities inherent in different countries and their cultures and laws. Robin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you.
I am glad to be here. This is an amazing opportunity, and I'm excited to share what I'm involved in.
Yeah, and you're involved in a lot. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is that you are a full-time real estate investor.
Yes.
And you syndicate, you do a lot of development, you invest in the US, and you've started to invest abroad, which I know is a topic that people are really interested in, myself included. And so I really wanted to dive into your journey as a full-time investor and what led you into looking at developments, which are considered riskier, let's say, than maybe just buying like a stabilized cash flowing multifamily in like a gateway city in the US. But the benefits that have come with that are, it sounds like in chatting with you, a lot more than financial. So so maybe just to get started, just give us a sense of like how you got to where you are today. Like you always speak to this, and I love it so much, is like your why and how that's driven you forward.
Yes, the why. So let me just start with that. I was not crystal clear on my why when I started my journey. And so that has evolved through the years. And so a little bit about how I got started in the field of investing. About 20 plus years ago, my husband and I began really just voraciously reading books, attending seminars, all kinds of information that's out there, and just kind of began feeding our minds. We didn't really take action on anything that we had learned about for a lot of different reasons until about 7 years ago. And I probably relate to most people. My background was in healthcare. I ran nursing homes for 24 years. And so I worked, my husband worked, and had an engineering firm here in the Houston, Texas market. And we have 3 busy kids. So we were both really busy with our careers, really busy with really busy children, and they were all involved in different things simultaneously going on at the same time. And so we were running in a lot of different directions. And I felt robotic. I felt like, my God, is this it? But this is my life. And then it was like, let's really do some of the things we had talked about. And we started out in single family homes, which is an easy place to start. Right. And so I have a handful of those. And then my husband began buying the real estate under his businesses, under the engineering firms that we have here in Texas in different cities. And so that was a really smart move. It's sort of the McDonald's theory. And then from there, we got involved in some self-storage facilities and began investing in a couple of those. And It's sort of the world of investing kind of begins to you move forward as you get a little more comfortable in one area, you learn about something else, and then you kind of learn more from your mistakes than your wins, honestly. And so that's exactly what happened for us. And you also get a little more educated and you realize that your team includes your accountant, you need attorneys, you need financial advisors, all of those people that help support you because you're growing a business, you're growing a real estate investment business. You begin learning what you need and what's not a good fit anymore. Our traditional accountant really was not what we needed. If we brought questions, that would be great, but we needed somebody to ask us questions and kind of help navigate some of that. So we began building our team, and then that moved us into the world of syndicating. And 2 years ago, I did not even know what syndication meant. I never even heard the term. And so that kind of moves you into a space of who's your network, who are you hanging out with, what mastermind groups are you involved in, what seminars are you going to. And we began hearing this word and this jargon, and it was like, okay, what is that? Well, that's using other people's money to really buy bigger deals and be involved in bigger deals and become a general partner in bigger deals. And so that allowed us to actually close on our first multifamily property. It's a 200-door multifamily property in Atlanta, Georgia, this past February. So that's really kind of how that transpired. But in the middle of that, we were traveling internationally. We love to travel. And so we spent a good deal of time in Belize, probably 7-8 years. We, were kind of going back and forth, and we're scuba divers. And so we really love to go where, the water's beautiful and, it felt a little off the grid
Right.
back then. And that's not even been that long. And so that got us considering, well, gosh, we've never jumped into the world of international investing. What would that look like for us?
Right.
And so actually right before COVID, we went on this explore Belize, look at properties on the island and kind of see where investment recommendations might be made. And so we did that. And what we were seeing is that what rents there on the island of Ambergris Caye is a lot of 1 bedroom, 1 bathrooms. Like you'll have a group of 4 people go, and statistically you would see a couple of years ago where that was like the highest rental recommendation. So we thought, okay, we're coming down here frequently enough, let's consider buying one of those. But we didn't. We ended up going against recommendation, and we elected to get involved in a project that was being built. And we invested in a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom there with one of the major brands that has hit the island, the Marriott, and it's the Alaya Belize there. And so we got involved in that project with that developer. And let me just make sure I'm very clear. I mean, we're an owner. We weren't involved in the actual development of that project. But what we did do is we were able to see from the ground up within a very short period of time how you can actually get a project started on an island and get a project finished and see that a project is actually cash flowing. So that was very exciting to be a part of all of that. So from that, I would say we've spent a great deal of time in that community and kind of fell in love with the people. The people of Belize have amazing hearts, and they're just really solid. And we just really liked the culture. And so we began looking at how we've been so blessed with so much and have had just incredible people kind of allow us to get involved in different projects. We thought really kind of how can we give back to that community? So we are involved in a development project there where it's really focused on workforce housing, because when you begin to look at the housing for locals there, it's really very poor conditions. I mean, homes are on like bricks, doors are open, there might be, a sheet or something hanging as the door. I mean, it's very, very rustic in some components of that island. And then you'll see housing that just is looks like something that might have a front door and but is very tiny and is just not okay. It's not an okay place to live. So
Right.
honestly, our heartstrings were pulled and we just felt like this was something that we wanted to do. Real estate is so expensive there, but we were able to partner with a developer who is incredibly connected and just has some of the same why as we do. It's your why that really sets your trajectory at appeal on your investments. And so our why for that project is different than our why on some other projects that we're involved in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And you've transitioned so much in all
Mhm.
of these years. And so I think it's a really important point about the different why and also different goals
Yes.
and different times in our lives. Because when you started, like most people start with single family because it's
Yes.
easy to understand. It's like the gateway drug into real estate. And for some people, it's enough to have a couple of those. They don't mind managing them. Then it goes from there. And then the more you learn, the more you realize, I feel like your capability, like you
Mhm.
gain confidence in your ability and capacity to do things. And then it's like, well, what about this? And then what about that? Like you didn't start investing in a development in Belize first.
No.
Right. I mean,
No.
like you got there over time because
I
there's that
did.
learning curve and that comfort. And I feel like by the time you're getting into development abroad, to me, this is my personal opinion, you got to know what you're doing, especially if you're going to invite other people to invest, like
Mhm.
as stewards of capital. Like
Yes.
that's a big deal to bring forward an opportunity that inherently is higher risk or can be considered to be higher risk. Obviously there's different risks abroad than here, and different returns and also different benefits.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's really important points, and I hope that for those listening that really comes through, that there's that also that track record. I think that's like the word that we would use, like at Alpha,
Mhm.
like that's an important word. And
Mhm.
real estate investors know, like somebody's track record, there's no magic bullet. It's your track record. Like that's it.
Right, right. And from a personality standpoint, I will tell you that my husband and I, with our syndication business, which is called REAP, Real Equity Investment Partners, we love lifestyle investing. And so we love to travel. And, I think it's important to recognize that in this day and age, in traveling, airfare, destinations, everything you do is exponentially expensive and becoming even more so, but people are still traveling. And we have seen with the shift with COVID, when travel began opening up again, there was a lot more travel within the United States,
Mhm.
because there were restrictions. People didn't want to go get a COVID test before traveling. People didn't want to wear mask on an airplane. Now that's, changed. So, there's a lot of reasons why with a lot of destination investments, if you will. But specific to Belize, I will tell you that what I have seen once the borders opened and you could come back in, travel has picked back up drastically. And thank goodness, because it is a country as a whole that depends primarily on tourism.
Right. Of course.
Tourism is their everything. And so then take that even a step further and come off the mainland and go to some of the surrounding islands. It's everyone's livelihood. And so you're supporting, people to be able to go and, make their house payments, because
Yeah.
many of these folks don't own their own homes. They're renting, you know. And so aside from the heartstrings, we began looking at the business opportunity of buying land and building a development, and what does that look like and how can we do that? And you so much said very perfectly, you have to look at someone's track record and their experience, and it's really important that as you begin that journey to look at investing offshore, if you're going to get involved with some sort of a syndication, that you're involved with someone that's been there, done that before in that area and understands the local market
Yeah.
and is connected to local government.
I was going to say
Really
that's
important.
that last piece, right? There's so many other variables that I think might be taken for granted here, like government. I mean, I think most people understand we need to pull permits for things, and then there's like city regulations and state regulations, but it's like a whole other world in
Yes.
other countries, and there's different kind of rules of engagement and a different relationship, I would imagine, between locals and foreigners, and those are
Yes.
different waters to navigate. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, a little. I am not the complete expert there, but
Sure.
I
No, but
will
just your experience,
certainly
like
do the best
even
I can. And with that question, again, I would say specifically to that, our development partner that we're involved with has been heavily entrenched in that market for many, many years, and has those relationships and has a really solid track record. And so coming alongside this individual, they have had to understand who we are and trust who we are and vet that we are the people that we say that we are. And so that's a very important piece, is that alignment. And so you've got to make sure that you're keeping up with the changes that are happening in the actual community, that you're present, that you maintain those connections, that you maintain connections with the banks there and who's operating the banks, because those relationships, just like here in the US, when we begin doing investments, you need to have a really great relationship with your lenders.
Yeah.
Even syndicating, you've got to have phenomenal relationships with your lenders.
Yeah.
And so it transcends over across borders. You've got to be able to do the same thing. And there too, you have to build your team in that specific country. And you've got to have attorneys that you're working with and you're creating relationships with. It's really no different. The relationships are key to any investment that you do here in the US. It's the same there. And then when your deal is done, you're still nurturing that relationship.
Absolutely.
It's not a one and done deal. It's a continuation of a relationship and a friendship, and that goes years beyond because you have presence.
Yeah. And do
Mhm.
you find that there's more interest? You said it was off the grid and now it's not. And I've been hearing Belize from multiple different people for many months, just out of
Mhm.
the blue, completely unrelated. When did Belize get on so many people's radars? And because you've been going for a while, starting as tourism,
Yes.
like what
Yes.
changed? Like, why is it so interesting to people?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. One, it's incredibly beautiful and it has a diverse ecosystem. If you're just kind of talking about what's happening there, you have the rainforest, you have amazing things to go see on the mainland. And then you've got the marine component. You've got the second largest barrier reef in the world. And it's not that far from the US. From any given point, where you fly from, you
What's that,
can
like a
get
couple
to
hours or
Belize
so?
City, even from LA. I think you can do it in about 4 hours, 5 hours.
Oh, that's
From
really
Houston,
close.
where I live, you can hop on a direct flight and it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Okay.
So
Very close.
you've got that,
Yeah.
um, and then, as I said, environmentally, what all you have going on, and then the population is not really that high. And then it's a Caribbean island, so primarily you've got a language component where it's mostly an English speaking country, you know which makes travel and communication easier for those individuals who are not bilingual, and then you look at just the fact that you've got any number of chains moving onto Ambergris Key right now for developments, hotel chains, so people are looking at, there's only so much waterfront property available anywhere in this world. And when you factor in the beauty, the ease of transportation, it just makes the cost of property alone skyrocket. So what I've seen literally in the last, gosh, 5, 6 years really, where you had water taxis maybe 7 years ago, water taxis. Now that's really almost non-existent. You've got golf carts, everybody's got golf carts or before the golf carts, a lot of people were, riding bicycles. Well, you see that still, but not so much. And so it's just like those little evolutions that begin changing, and you see it and you go, oh, well, people love the old feel of, it doesn't take me long to get here and I'm like completely off the grid. Well, you still have that, but it's more commercialized,
I
you
see.
know, a little more commercialized just because you've got the major chains coming in.
Right.
Not a Starbucks, not a McDonald's. You'll never see that kind of thing, I don't believe. But you do have some large hotel chains.
I see.
coming in
And do they take
buying
US
land.
dollar?
They do. They do take a US dollar.
Do they do that for property?
Yes, they do that for property. And so you can do a transaction just like here where you're wiring dollars into a bank account and the transaction takes place, and if you have to have a note or you're financing another portion of, let's say, a deal, you're just working just like here in the US with that lender to qualify for a loan.
Right.
You have to submit a lot of documentation and, just like here, it's the same thing, surprisingly. And you just have to kind of be on your game and have your follow up, and just like here, you have a closing date and
Sure.
it's really like here.
So there's a commercial lending system there? Like,
It's not a commercial lending system. It's just really with like the Bank of Belize and their local banks that they have there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's not as well developed as the commercial lending in the US. I mean, I think like globally, I don't know that there's another country that has such a commercialized lending infrastructure. Really, a lot of countries don't. A lot of countries, people don't even think about putting debt on property. It's just not how they operate whatsoever. But obviously it's very prevalent here in the US. I feel like we don't even know how to do it without debt. Like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? You don't have debt on your property. We've just gotten so used to that.
Right. Well, debt is not a bad thing.
No, I know.
As
That's a
we
big
know.
lesson. That's a big lesson, for people. Like, I know well, there's certain debt like that I don't want, but
Right.
debt on assets, this idea, right? We call it leverage, but also what leverage means is to have more using what you have and to build. I mean, and if you can do that responsibly, there's great returns to be had there. So it's good to hear that there is that possibility to do also with local banks there, in Belize. Or like, what are the interest rates like?
Well, it kind of depends on your deal, and it depends on your personal financial situation. And I will tell you this without getting into too much detail, that when we financed one of our deals, some of the criteria that they look at is a little bit, I'm getting a little tongue tied, a little bit different. For example, here, how you might be able to get into an opportunity to take out, let's say, a 20 or 30-year note on something. There, it's not that way. They look at things like your age and your ability to pay your note back based on your age, and where they kind of see your lifespan, if you will. So kind of like an interesting little nugget there. So you don't necessarily, I'm in my 50s, my husband is in his 50s. So, it's not like you're going and getting a note, a 20-year note. So, because they look at, well, are you still going to be alive when you're 78?
So they literally tie it to
Kind of, there's
you.
like this calculation matrix, and there were just some little idiosyncrasies like that. And I would be remiss if I said any more, because I can't really tell you all those details,
Sure,
not
sure.
because I don't want to, but because I don't know them. But yeah, they look at things like that, and it's like, okay, well, this is a little different. So
Right.
yes, it's very similar to here in documentation and bank statements and all this kind of stuff that you send in to qualify for a loan. But then, yeah, they look at, like here, someone's ability to pay it back, but they're looking at,
Wow.
it's a little interesting.
It is. It's something
Yeah.
it's got me
You don't
thinking
think about
about
that.
things.
I mean, I
No.
wouldn't have thought about that. So
No.
anyway, but yeah,
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 well, that makes sense. I mean, if it's not like in the structural system of how they operate, then I would understand that that is a real risk for them if I'm an underwriter and there isn't an established financial system based on debt like here in the US, then from a risk perspective, that would make sense to me.
So I think your question was, you were asking me like an interest rate. And at that
Yeah,
point in time when we locked in, so let me go back and make sure I answer your question. It
sure.
was like 10%, which is higher than, I mean, even though interest rates are moving, back when we locked in, that's what it was. And so, you just have to be prepared for a little bit higher of an interest rate than maybe what you're accustomed to
Yeah.
here. So it's
Yeah.
just part of it. It's just
Mm.
part of it.
That's really interesting. It must change also, obviously, like how you model out your returns and your cash flow and your repayment and just the whole business plan around if you're purchasing, like you said, you purchased a property through Marriott and now you're doing a workforce housing development, clearly two very different things. Also, those in and of themselves.
Yeah. And I think just like anyone who's building anything, the supply chain and how that's affecting, costs, the delays alone for product, but then the cost of the product, so that has great impact. And so, your whole pro forma completely changes. And so you have to be able to just really kind of pay attention and make sure that, your idea at one moment and your plan for what you're doing, that you still can do it and bring a project to completion,
Yeah.
you know, like here. And so what we've learned is you have to be able to shift and navigate a little bit, So for example, the project that we were looking at, we had desired with our plans to have a larger project. Well, now we've kind of shrunk our our design plan. We're not building as many units,
Okay.
so, but that's just part of it. You've just got to be able to roll with what's before you and make those numbers work, like with any investment.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty much with
That's universal. I mean,
anything.
you've
Yeah.
just got to be able to do that. You've got to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Yeah, we found the same, even just doing any kind of small project around the house or remodel like that. It even just a basic remodel, like rebuilt the front deck at this house that we moved
Uh,
into. And because of supply chain issues, we couldn't find the materials that we needed. And so that changed the design and that changed it changed a lot of things. And that's on something really small, but for like that even caused like a 2-month delay, because then you have to go back to the drawing board. And I've talked about my husband a lot on the show. I mean, he's an architect and works in commercial construction and is very skilled with this,
mhm.
and he's very specific. And so he's like, well, no, I will not use, plan B. I have to go design a whole brand new plan A again. And so it just, it just takes a lot longer.
Yeah, so you know very intimately what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
so does anyone that's doing any remodeling with someone who's in construction or is just trying to do a do-it-yourself project.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
everyone's having to shift and just do things differently. But that's so much the world that we're in right now in every way that you can imagine. And so, I just think real estate and investing and looking at opportunities to have passive income, you know, are really key. So whatever that asset class is, or wherever your investments are, just be looking at what your why is with that. That's very important. It's like, what's your end game goal? Are you looking for passive income? Are you looking for generational wealth? Are you looking for an asset just to appreciate so that at some future said point in time, you can flip out of that and roll those dollars into something else? Is that a tax play? What's your need? Those are all very important. So my suggestion on the international investing is really look at your why with your investment schematic, and really, where are you trying? Is it just that you have this desire to have something out there? And if so, that's wonderful. But be smart about what you're investing in. And if you're a risk taker, jump out there and do something risky, and but be willing to maybe not have it work out. You've got to be able to to play that game also. But I would say that what I'm seeing within, like I said, there's only so much waterfront property. Those properties are really increasing in value anywhere and everywhere, not just Belize.
What kind of, just to give people a reference, like what kind of reference in pricing, like what's waterfront going for in Belize?
Well, if you're just talking about like land in general, raw land, again, depending on land size, if you're talking about maybe like what might be considered an acre of
Yeah.
land, and so that could be different in exactly like what the measurement of the waterfront
Yeah,
section
but
of that.
like ballpark, like roughly, like, I mean, there's not even land, there's not even oceanfront in the US period. So I guess because we know everything's really expensive in the US right now. So if somebody's thinking like, well, I might want to diversify my real estate holdings. And I love this idea of lifestyle investing. It's actually something I'm personally like really looking towards longer term to own properties in different locations and like you to make an impact on the local community there through being like a good person, a good investor, et cetera. But like from an investment perspective, like, just like a ballpark figure, what would something like waterfront cost that you could develop on?
Well, raw land, maybe without any utilities, water, electricity, anything like that, that's maybe been brought in, you might be looking, and don't quote me on like an acre lot that Robin's saying that an acre lot can go for X number of dollars, but you could be looking anywhere from, let's say, maybe $600,000 US,
Wow.
less than an acre, like a small
Yeah.
section strip.
Mm-hmm.
Little view to well over several $1 million.
Oh, that's high.
For
Oh, wow.
a piece of property, depending on the stretch. As I'm saying, it's just like here when you're buying a home in a neighborhood. It's how your acreage is laid out. How much is it property that you can actually clear off? Or is it like mangrove?
Sure.
Is it,
Wow.
that's waterfront?
Right.
Do you
Technically.
have to fill in that land to
Right.
create land?
Right.
A little bit. So it kind of depends on what you might be, what you're looking at. And you might be able to get, okay, so several years ago, we were on a little boat ride and we were around the far tip of Ambergris Key, and there was a piece of property over there, undeveloped, completely undeveloped, very raw, absolutely nothing, but it was waterfront. And at that time, it was like $375,000. and it was about half an acre, roughly. And when I say undeveloped, I'm talking about eh, like water, electricity, those things were nowhere near being brought
Mm.
in to that area yet. So then you have to kind of explore, what does that look like? Do I need, solar? Do I need, what does all that look like to be brought out to that area? So, but that
Wow.
was 2018.
Oh, so
So
interesting.
we're 4 years later. That
Yeah.
was 4 years later.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
hope that kind of gives you a point of reference.
It does. Yeah.
Um,
It's,
and
there's obviously
I
lots.
hope I haven't misquoted, but just with some things that I've looked at,
No, it's
and
great.
you have to
It's
look at future
helpful.
use. Where are the roads?
Yeah.
What's the anticipated development around what's happening?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that, like you just said it, right? It's like anticipating the future. It's like any development. If you can get into an area and be precocious and patient and know that there's development around an area, those are some of the best investments that you can make, being early on, having done your research to know that that is going to be developed and trusting in that, and then doing your part in it does
mhm.
pay off
Yes,
long term.
yes, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
And so, okay, well, this is so interesting. I'm really interested to learn more about Belize. So
So I would just share with you this, for someone who is just wanting to get started, and not want to deal with like house maintenance and all of those things that come into, like, if you were to buy like a single family residence there and just use it for personal use, or have it set up in a rental pool, you have to think of all the maintenance. Where do you live and what's the headache factor? Because it is Saltaire. You're looking at replacing air conditioning units and refrigerators and all of these sorts of things. And so I would say, if somebody were looking to get involved in something and just it be sort of turnkey where you don't have to do much, I would suggest getting involved in some level of a condo development or something like that, where those groups are already in place and can take care of those things for you without, and you have a minor fee that you pay. That's a great way to just get started in that area and see that it cash flows. It will still cash flow even if you have a note on. So, that would be a great way to get started and just kind of understand the banking system and, all of that.
would you recommend that somebody take 1, 2, 3 trips to an area, spend some time there before making an investment decision?
Well, certainly. I certainly would. But if you have an idea of what it is that you're looking for, there's so much research that you can do online, without having to actually go take a physical trip. But you need to do that too. But I think there's nothing better than putting your feet on the ground and immersing yourself in a community and understanding, having enough time to not just have the wow factor of, this is really beautiful and I love this and this is like, feels like vacation. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to go enough where it doesn't feel like vacation,
Right.
and you're looking at the community as a whole, and what is it that you're trying to gain from this investment? Because there are different things that you want to look at, like, how close is your investment property, let's say, to the airport?
Yeah.
Because you want to look at the road development. The road development doesn't go all the way down the island. So if you've got paved roads for maybe 4 miles, let's say, and then beyond that, it's like rough caliche, I don't really think that's a good and wise investment if you're looking for somebody that's just trying to go for a short weekend.
Right.
It needs to be easy travel. So you
Right.
kind of have to think about, those little
Yeah.
things,
Yeah. Yeah.
that really
Well,
play into it.
yeah. Oh, so much to think about. I'm really intrigued now about
So maybe what we need
Belize.
to do is we need to set up a Discover Belize trip for
Yeah.
those individuals that would be interested in going, and let's go check out some real estate.
Anyone who wants to go discover Belize, shoot me an email and we'll make it happen. And I am
We
not
will.
kidding. I
We
am
will
not
do that.
kidding.
We will do that. That would be a lot of fun. But
Would.
definitely, I definitely think you need to go. People need to go see the interior portion of the island, but get on a boat and go around and see what's happening. And then the aerial views too. There's a lot happening. There's a lot.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Robin, there's one more question I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. And that is, what does wealth mean to you?
Oh gosh. It's meant a lot of different things through the years. Right now, I'm in a season of life where I'm looking at generational wealth that goes into perpetuity beyond me and my direct adult children. I'm looking at those generations beyond myself. And so I'm looking at different investment strategy and my financial schematic on how to make that happen. But I'm also want you to know that wealth to me is not like just dollars. I feel incredibly wealthy in so many ways with, assets like my friendships, that's wealth. I look at myself as being a wealthy woman because of the mastermind groups that I'm involved in. That's wealth, and tapping into the intellectual property of other intelligent and brilliant women and men. And, I have a real passion for, developing the mindset and skill of women in investing. And so that's wealth, because I want women to be able to make financial decisions, have the knowledge, but have the confidence to be able to make a decision. Those are two different things. You can have the knowledge, but unless you've got the confidence and you take action, that's a whole nother deal. And so that's wealth to me. And then to see, what's the word I'm trying to say? How we've poured into the lives of our children, with education and modeling. I'm not talking about, going to college and getting a degree. I'm talking about the financial education that you don't get in school anywhere, how they use that and do something with it. So that's wealth. And that's sort of how I would define it. And maybe I've sort of cross-referenced myself too much, but I don't know. But I find wealth to be more than dollars, and more than, cryptocurrencies and all that. Wealth is so many other things that make up a person.
That's beautiful. I think you said it perfectly. Everyone has a different sense of what it is. And what's been beautiful is, like, I've asked every guest this, is that everyone comes back and they say, yes, money, but it's all of these other things that money enables or facilitates. And I think that shifts our relationship to money and to wealth. And then to me, it kind of reminds me that no matter what, even in on the worst days, I'm always wealthy because I'm abundant in so many other things. And I think everything you said is just that.
Exactly. Yeah. Money is just a vehicle. But you've got to invest in those relationships, or money doesn't do anything for you. It just doesn't. End of the day.
I love that so much. Thank you for coming on. I love this conversation. I am going to go do so much research and talk to you. And then if people want to do a discovery trip, I am not kidding.
Let's figure that out.
I want to go to Belize. I love scuba diving. So I just have not been gone in years and years. So it's just, I would love to do that. And just so much gratitude to you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to just kind of share from my heart our where and our why. So thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to Real Wealth, Real Health. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode and found it both informative and insightful. We welcome all your questions and your feedback about today's episode, and especially we welcome your questions about specific topics that you would like us to cover. So shoot us an email at podcast@alphai.com. And if you have a moment, we really appreciate ratings and reviews, as it helps us grow our online community and our interactions with you. And we'll also be linking to a number of relevant articles on topics that we might have touched on during our conversations. Some of them are broad, some of them are technical, but we're always aiming to provide information that helps you better understand the mechanics of building this healthy financial foundation, especially if you're looking to do this with real estate.